What would you think if I told you that narcissists, though they may appear powerful, manipulative, and unshakable, are, in truth, terrified of the one thing they can never control, their true self? On the surface, they crave admiration. Their voice rings out like command. Their eyes constantly seeking affirmation. But beneath that, in the place where the light of reason does not reach, lies a hollow void. They survive through reflection, like a mirror that only exists when someone stands before it. In that darkness, they cannot bear solitude, for there is no one left to deceive. Not even themselves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you despise another, you are really despising yourself." And what the narcissist fears most is not hatred, but the absence of control. The loss of someone to manipulate. Someone to use as an excuse to avoid the fractured reflection they dare not face. To such a person, your silence is a blow. Your boundaries are a mirror that strips them bare. And your calm is a rejection they cannot bend to their will. Narcissists do not merely fear truth. They fear you realizing a truth far more powerful, that you never needed them to become who you truly are. In the inner world of a narcissist, honor is not something to be upheld, it is a mask, polished by the praise of others. They do not love, they consume. They do not connect, they possess. Emotion, to them, is not a bridge, it is a tool. When you show compassion, they play the victim. When you fall silent, they scream for attention using the most insidious weapons, guilt, blame, or carefully scripted pity. Seneca once warned, "The most dangerous enemy is the one who pretends to be your friend." The narcissist does not always shout or humiliate. Sometimes, they whisper with calculated tenderness. They say they love you, but what they love is the feeling of control over you. And when you begin to awaken, when light begins to cut through the shadow they've built in your mind, that is when they become their most ruthless. Because what they truly fear is not your absence, but your clarity. Not the image they worked so hard for you to believe, but the hollow entity beneath it, the child never held by truth, only fed by delusion. Stoic philosophy does not teach revenge. It teaches sovereignty of the self. Epictetus reminds us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. The narcissist may write the script, but you are not bound to play the part. When one practices Stoic philosophy, they learn to stand firm like a rock amid a raging torrent, neither swept away by praise nor submerged by criticism. In stark contrast, the narcissist has no inner anchor. They do not live by reason, as Marcus Aurelius counseled, but by the judgments, attention, and approval of others. To them, people are not companions but mirrors reflecting the image they wish to project. Epictetus declared, "Nothing belongs to you except your own mind." Yet the narcissist does not know how to inhabit their own mind. They fear silence. They flee from introspection. They paint a world in which everyone must orbit them, like stars around a self-proclaimed sun. The moment you stop revolving around them, they lose their sense of self. And in that loss lies their deepest dread, invisibility before the eyes of others. The Stoic lives in no need of validation. They abide by reason, virtue, and duty. They do not react impulsively or retaliate in anger. Instead, they observe, like a sentinel guarding the citadel of the soul against the invasion of turbulent emotions. You need not raise your voice to defend yourself against a narcissist. Your silence, nurtured by wisdom and discipline, becomes an unshakable act of resistance. When you begin to live in accordance with nature, as Stoic philosophy teaches, you come to realize that not every battle is worth fighting. Some attacks do not require a response. Not because you are weak, but because you see clearly. The attacker is striking at a version of you they created in their own mind. They cannot touch your essence, because your essence does not depend on their approval. Seneca once wrote, "A man who is not overcome by misfortune has conquered fate." When you refuse to react, when you step out of the cycle of manipulation, you do more than free yourself from a narcissist's grasp. You demonstrate what they fear most, that you do not need them in order to live, to understand yourself, or to be of value to someone whose entire identity is built upon control and dependency. Your self-possession is a silent but devastating refusal. And so, they will try everything. They will twist the story, invent words you never said, rally others against you. But a Stoic knows, what lies outside your mind lies outside your control, and thus cannot take your dignity from you. No one can insult you unless you grant them access to your inner peace. In your calm, they hear the collapse of the power they no longer hold. There is a fear that the narcissist will never admit, yet it eats away at them slowly, like water wearing down stone. The fear of being forgotten. When you turn your back, not in anger, not in revenge, not with bitterness, but simply because you no longer need them to complete your life, to them, that is a kind of death. Not the death of the body, but the death of the illusion of power they built through manipulation and demand. Marcus Aurelius taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the Stoic's weapon, to refuse to be drawn into another's performance. When you do not react, you do not feed their chaos. You let them drift, alone, within the storm they created. The narcissist manipulates through rage or pity. They shift roles endlessly, victim, saint, lover, abuser, all in service of one goal, to pull you into the center of a distorted universe they've imagined. But a mind trained in reason sees the truth. Beneath the noise, there is only emptiness. The more you step back, the clearer you see. The more peace you hold, the less power they have. And in that powerlessness, they are confronted by a primal fear, that no one believes the story anymore, that no one plays their part in the script they once controlled. True freedom doesn't come from defeating someone, but from no longer needing to win. This is one of the core teachings of Stoic philosophy, that your dignity isn't defined by what others say about you, but by how you carry yourself, in silence, amid storms that require no defense. Epictetus once said, if you want to be free, don't wish for anything outside your control. And there is nothing more beyond your reach than the approval of someone who only loves themselves. The narcissist will try to convince you that their love is a prize, but one who lives by reason doesn't chase prizes. They seek inner peace. And that peace is a kind of freedom the narcissist can never touch, because it lies beyond their control. The Stoic does not need to prove their worth. They do not retaliate. They do not demand the last word, because the one who is no longer moved by emotion is the one who can no longer be manipulated. The narcissist wants your reaction, because in it, they find power. But when you sit still in the storm, unshaken, needing no explanation, you are walking out of the labyrinth they built. What they fear most is not your criticism, but your gaze. Once clear, when you finally see them for what they are, and no longer feel fear, need, or attachment. In the end, true healing isn't about leaving someone, it's about returning to yourself. A soul once shaken by manipulation, when illuminated by reason and self-mastery, gradually becomes still, like a lake after the storm. Stoic philosophy never promises you won't be hurt, but it teaches this: pain does not define you, and it never empowers the one who caused it. Seneca once wrote, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The narcissist thrives on controlling the minds of others, convincing you that you are small, weak, and dependent on their presence to exist. But that was never true. When you choose to walk away, to remain silent, to stop reacting to their psychological games. You begin to reshape reality, no longer revolving around them, no longer imprisoned by the invisible chains of false expectations. And then, something miraculous happens. You begin to hear the voice within, that had long been drowned out. You begin to remember that dignity comes not from recognition, but from integrity in action. You begin to live as a free person, not for anyone, not against anyone, but simply in accordance with nature, as Marcus Aurelius once did. Calm, deep, resilient. In that silence, you're not merely letting go of them. You're coming home to yourself. If you're still here, still listening to the final beats of this story, then perhaps, somewhere deep within, you have known suffering. Perhaps you're walking through the ruins of a relationship that made you forget your own worth. And if that is true, know this: you are not alone. Stoic philosophy is not a path of cold detachment. It is a path of courage. The courage to face truth, to heal through reason, and to love yourself through mindful awareness. Every step you take away from someone else's control is a step toward the light, not a blinding light, but a steady, quiet one, a light no one can extinguish, except you. If these words have touched something within you, if you ever need a place to return to when your heart begins to waver, then subscribe to this channel. Here, there is no judgment, no pressure, only the stillness of philosophy, the depth of the soul, and the slow, steady journey back to who you truly are. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice to remind you, you are worthy of freedom, and you are already strong enough to begin.